Today on Notsam Wrestling, more Money in the Bank fallout, more on the Wyatt Six and Bo Dallas. MJF turns heel and John Cena is retiring. Say it ain't so. This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling, and we had a tremendous week last week. 3 great podcasts. Of course, there was episode 506. Then there was our emergency podcast that immediately followed the release of WrestleMania Behind the Curtain, the documentary on WWE's YouTube channel. Then there was the immediate reaction to Money in the Bank that went up very, very late on Saturday night with myself and Megan Morant. And something that we learned at Money in the Bank is the fact, and I don't even want to say this out loud, but we have a date. John Cena is retiring. Now, I do think that you got to look at, or at least for me, who was distraught when this announcement was made. When he said, because, we're watching Money in the Bank, okay? And Trish Stratus, the host, said, she introduces John Cena, and John Cena comes out. And his t-shirt says, "The last time is now." It says, "Farewell Tour." The back of the shirt has a door on it that says, "After this, you can't see me." And it's all a play on, my time is now and you can't see me, but he's saying he's leaving. And anybody that has listened to any John Cena interviews in the last year or so has heard him say that he's winding down. That, as he approaches, I think he's 49, he said, maybe. And as he approaches 50, he's like, this is it for John Cena, and he knows his time is coming to a close. We saw him at WrestleMania this year doing the run-in at the end. We saw him at WrestleMania last year with Austin Theory. We saw that amazing run that he had in the fall of last year, kind of coming in and doing September, what was it? I feel like it was Money in the Bank up until the very beginning of November, if I remember right. And it was a really great, when we had that extended John Cena run for the season where he was at most SmackDowns, it was really, really great. And I'm glad he had that run because that was really the initial run of appreciation for John Cena and this idea that he really is awesome. And this idea that we're lucky to still be seeing him because, there are a lot of new fans and a lot of new fans listen to this show. And not all of us were watching John Cena when I was. Some of us were. If you were there with me, you remember. There was a long time when we did not appreciate John Cena at all. But time has a way of showcasing the broad strokes of what was going on. And the idea that for those 10 years, one person could be the top guy. One person could have all these classic matches. One person could be the babyface to have all those opponents. One person could kind of, to an extent, and in a lot of periods, keep things afloat, keep the money coming in. And that's never been done before for the length of time that John Cena did it for. And so when he came out with this gear on, I said, no. And he came into the ring and he said, "I'm here to announce my retirement." I said, no. I didn't want to hear it. He said he's here to announce his retirement. He's been talking about it for a long time. He says, he starts talking about things, though, about history that's going to be made, right? And he starts talking about Raw on Netflix. And he says that he'll be at that Raw. He says, "I've never performed at Raw on Netflix. So that's a huge deal. And I'll be there for that." And I said, "Are you retiring?" Because he was talking about why here? Well, because Toronto and Canada are so, no matter what's going on in the business, the fans in Canada always come correct. Why Money in the Bank? Because Money in the Bank is the very symbol of opportunity in the WWE. So what we get is the revelation that he's actually announcing his retirement. But that's not to say his retirement is today. No. John Cena announces that next year he will have a year of incredible lasts, the likes of which no one has seen before. The 2025 Royal Rumble will be his last. The 2025 Elimination Chamber will be his last. In Las Vegas, WrestleMania 2025 will be the last WrestleMania that he competes in. Now, the way he said 2025 Royal Rumble will be my last, 2025 Elimination Chamber will be my last, of course it could mean he'll just be at those pay-per-views, but a big part of me, as I rewatched it a couple times, was like, is he telling us straight up he's going to be in those matches? Because it's kind of, especially this early on in what's going to be his retirement tour, is something that I'd like to see. I'd like to see John Cena in a Royal Rumble match. I don't want him to have a match at the Royal Rumble event. I want him in the Royal Rumble. I don't want to see him have a match at the Elimination Chamber event. I want to see him in the Elimination Chamber. And who knows if that'll happen or not. I hope it does. I hope that's what he's getting at. And I think that it should. If you're saying that 2025 is my opportunity to do everything for the last time, wrestling at the Royal Rumble Premium Live event is like, okay, but you're wrestling at other Premium Live events throughout 2025. Wrestling in the Royal Rumble match for the last time, that's a last. Wrestling in the Elimination Chamber match for the last time, that's a last. He said it includes returning to Toronto to, quote, kick ass. So, I mean, clearly the idea that they would have another event in Toronto in 2025 is certainly not unfathomable. So I guess John Cena is saying that's already on the list of potential events that he's going to do. And we say a list of potential events that he's going to do because he did this segment in the ring and there was still some confusion. Like, okay, is he saying he's going to retire, but he'll have his retirement match at WrestleMania? Is that the gist? And he cleared it up by going to the press conference, talking for a very long time, making poor Kasama in there go crazy, trying to wrap the thing up. And he said, no, I think I'm going to go long. I think I'm going to answer the people's questions. And he said, and the way he described it, it sounded like this idea of a retirement tour was a John Cena pitch. And the way he said it was that the powers that be at WWE, Triple H, and everybody in charge called him up and said, okay, this is the period of time that we think we'd like you to do it in. And that was agreed upon. Now, I'm sure that Cena wasn't just waiting at home and he got a call and he said, okay, I'll be there. You know, there's as busy as his schedule is, I think that this is going to be technically an amazing thing to pull off. But what he said was that he's going January to December 2025. And some people are saying 18 months. He's not wrestling for the remainder of 2024. I think that the announcement came at Money in the Bank. Get ready, because 2025 is going to be the year that you get John Cena. And now he's not going to be at every single event, but he did say that they're still figuring out exactly how much he's going to do. But he's thinking like in the 30s or 40s in terms of number of dates that he's going to do. Will he be wrestling at every single one? I'm sure not. I don't think he's going to wrestle 40 matches in 2025. I think that a lot of those are TVs where there'll be promos, there'll be appearances, there'll be stuff like that. But I would imagine we'll get some house shows with John Cena. I would imagine we get a considerable amount of pay-per-view matches with John Cena, better than half maybe, hopefully. We'll get a good amount of TV appearances. And we'll get a hell of a story, most importantly. He said after 2025, competition is over, but that for years to come, he'll be a part of the WWE's extended family, whether that means, offering guidance, whether that means whatever, working in some kind of capacity that is not an in-ring competitor. And he also made mention of a bunch of events all across the world, which clearly means that the international events that are such a big part of WWE's year now are completely on the table for John Cena. So this is what we're left with. And it's interesting because when the hype was happening for WrestleMania, Triple H kept saying there's more coming. We got so much up our sleeve. This is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. And when The Rock is on that final boss run, it's hard to believe that that's only the beginning. It seems like this is their big thing, and then they're going to try to find the next big thing after it. But the fact that you have The Rock, who's clearly a part of this documentary about WrestleMania, who on his way out specifically said that he's coming back for Cody Rhodes. The fact that you got John Cena, who's announcing he's going to do this full year, which I feel like is going to be such an amazing story. And who knows? Because who knows what else there is, right? Because there were no rumors of this John Cena comeback. There were no reports of this John Cena comeback. This thing was kept very well under wraps. So I think that the questions that people are left with are generally like, what is this? What does this look like? What does this mean? Who's he going to be wrestling with? And we have time, and this might be something I do maybe later in the year, but the idea of fantasy booking a full 2025 for John Cena is very, very intriguing. I love that idea, but I've kind of got some in my head. I was thinking about it kind of all weekend, and I've got some broad strokes of where I think it should go. I think that it should start with the first Monday on Netflix, which I'm assuming will be called Day One Raw, whether it actually happens on Day One, whether it happens on the first Monday, whatever it is. Like, I don't know. I don't know what day of the week January 1st is this year or next year, but whether it's January 1st or the following Monday, that first Raw, and I wouldn't be shocked if that's the Raw you get The Rock at too. I also wouldn't be shocked if you get Roman Reigns on that Raw. The way things are shaping up, it does feel like that first Raw on Netflix is going to be a show where you get John Cena, The Rock, and Roman Reigns all together, all under the same roof. Now, I believe that those three are going to be telling separate stories. And there are some that believe that Rock and Roman are going to be part of the same story. I believe it's going to be separate stories. But still, just the idea that you have those three icons of three specific eras all under one roof. I mean, I don't know. It has the potential of being like beginning of WrestleMania 30 level cool. Although maybe not, because The Rock and Roman Reigns are so well connected. Well, whatever. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're here to talk about John Cena. So I think that with John Cena, and the fact that we already know he's going to be there for all of 2025. This is not like a Ric Flair run where it's Cena's here. Who knows how long he's here for? He's here until he loses a match. He's here until whatever. So let's appreciate him because at some point he'll be gone. We know when he shows up in January that our time is finite, but we still have a good amount of time. A year is a long time. So when he shows up in January, we're not sitting there going like, oh, we got to do everything right now. It's like, okay, we can feel free to allow ourselves to be buckled in and go along for this ride. I think that the idea of maybe John Cena, if it's a 3-hour Monday Night Raw on Netflix, either The Rock or John Cena should open that show. And maybe The Rock as a surprise. And maybe John Cena comes out in the same segment, right? That would make sense. But I think John Cena should wrestle on the first episode of Raw. I think there should be this idea that not only is because John Cena's already made the announcement that he's back in the WWE for 2025. So the idea of coming onto this first episode of Raw on Netflix to announce that you're back for 2025, it's like, it's great to see you. You're the man. You're the GOAT. We already knew that you were doing this. So unless there's a real hot angle that ends in some kind of beatdown, or unless it's some kind of element that tells the first story, I think starting Raw in 2025 with John Cena wrestling in the main event would be a great thing to do. John Cena, when he spoke about a world title reign at the press event, was very clear that he knows that his record is bad right now. He has lost a lot of matches. He lost to Solo Sikoa. He lost to Austin Theory. Like, this is what he's done for a little while now. He comes back and he loses. I don't remember when the last time he won a singles match was. So I think that's a story that goes into this, right? And being around for a year means that there's enough time that you can win a lot of matches and still put a lot of people over. And if you're going to be around for a year, John Cena losing for a year will lose its luster fairly quickly. John Cena coming back to Super Cena, that's going to be something that gains a lot of attention. It doesn't mean he wins every single match, but it means that, like, yeah, he's a difficult one to beat. I think day one Raw, Dominic Mysterio loses to John Cena. It just feels like, keep it simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We got a guy that everybody's going to boo. We got a guy that everybody's going to cheer. And the guy that everybody's going to cheer, he wins. And we are now starting this road that will hopefully, if done successfully, define 2025, which is John Cena's retirement tour. I think that we'll also see dates far more in advance than we used to. AEW, when Sting was retiring, was really smart about advertising those last events that Sting did as the last time Sting will be here, the last time Sting will be there. And I think you're going to get a lot of that with John Cena. I think there'll be a Madison Square Garden show at some point next year that they'll go, come here, because he won't be on the holiday tour. This is going to be the last time John Cena wrestles in Madison Square Garden. This is going to be the last time John Cena wrestles at each of these premium live events. This will be the last time John Cena wrestles in Toronto. You know, it'll become a ticket. It'll become an event in and of itself. In terms of actually getting this thing started, I think that John Cena should, and again, these are just broad strokes, and maybe I'll come back and correct some of this, but I think it should be a roller coaster, right? I think we should have little stories throughout that tell a much bigger story over the course of a year. So we're not telling we're not like paying attention to this one overarching story. We're telling several stories, but then in December of 2025, you look back and you realize they're all connected. It's all one kind of up, down thing. It's one roller coaster that we've all been riding together. You know, I think that you start John Cena strong, and then he announces he's going to be in the Royal Rumble match. He does well in the Royal Rumble match. He doesn't win the Royal Rumble match. He goes, that's okay, because I've decided that I want to break Ric Flair's record. I want to be the 17-time world champion. I didn't win the Royal Rumble. That's okay. I'm going to the Elimination Chamber. I'm going to win that, and I'm going to go to WrestleMania, and I'm going to win a world title. And then he goes into the Elimination Chamber, and he doesn't win. And then you get some villain. I don't know who it would be at that point. Like I said, we're very far out, which is why who knows who will even be babyface, who will be a heel. If there will be new superstars in WWE at that point, maybe Joe Hendry will be here. Who knows? So somebody starts putting that bug in John Cena's ear. Why are you even here? You can't get to the main event of WrestleMania anymore. You're taking spots in the Royal Rumble, you're not winning. You're taking spots in the Elimination Chamber, you're not winning. Why are you even here? And that sort of lack of confidence is what John Cena takes going into WrestleMania. And at WrestleMania, he beats a very, very formidable foe, whoever it is. And it's this like, okay, now we're dealing with something. Now we're dealing with John Cena. I think over the course of the months after WrestleMania, WrestleMania is late in the year, so like May, June, John Cena has big matches at premium live events that you're building towards. You're telling stories going into these matches that are indeed dream matches. And it gets to the point where John Cena finally gets his shot at the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. John Cena wins the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. At SummerSlam, we get this party, and at John Cena's last SummerSlam, he breaks the record. He becomes 17-time world champion. I think that he can have a short run with that title. That's the beauty of him being there for as long as he is. If SummerSlam is the beginning of August again next year, he has it all through August, all through September, and then right around October is where I have John Cena lose the title. Because my idea is John Cena comes in hot. Then January, February, he takes a dip. Going into WrestleMania, he tells a Rocky story, and at WrestleMania, he's back on top. He spends WrestleMania to SummerSlam getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and excitement and excitement and excitement. Because while we're still building from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, we're not going to be thinking about the end of the year. Nobody's thinking about December now. It's so hot. So then when he wins the world title, it's like, he really did it. This is so much fun. Then the question starts coming up, will he retire as champion? Maybe he says, you know what? If nobody can beat me for this title, maybe I won't leave at the end of 2025. Maybe this extends until I lose the title. But then eventually it does get spoiled, and maybe Gunther is the guy. Maybe Gunther holds the title for a year. Maybe Gunther wins the title at SummerSlam this year and holds it for a year until John Cena beats him. And then maybe in October, Gunther wins it back. Maybe somebody else wins it. I don't know. But I have John Cena losing the title in like early October, because I think the last 8 or 9 weeks of John Cena in the WWE towards the end of October is when we really realize it's over. The last 2 months of this run are just the thank you, John matches, just the thank you, John run, where it's just like every single time he shows up, we get reminded that we're lucky to see this guy. Every single time he has a match, we get reminded we are lucky to be watching in this era. And then at the end of the year, he has his final match. And I really think his last match, as we've gone through the last, 9 weeks or so of his run, with the clock ticking the entire time. And maybe there are little goals that he's got to accomplish on his way. Like, I've been enjoying being the world champion so much that I didn't get to do this. I didn't get to do that. I didn't get to do this. And now I'm looking at that calendar, and man, is my last day coming soon. And we get hit until the very end, where I really feel like John Cena's last match should be against Randy Orton. I don't think the two should touch at all. And then at the very end, at the end of December, maybe there's a special pay-per-view just for it. You could do a special premium live event that is simply called Thank You, John. And the main event of this show is John Cena versus Randy Orton one last time. And that's where we get to say goodbye to John Cena. And John Cena, of course, like the champ that he is, goes out on his back. Randy Orton wins. We prop him up, and John Cena gets to ride off into the distance. That's the broad strokes of where I see it going. I think there's going to be a lot of people. First of all, I almost think that this is such a big deal that there are people in the industry that will want to return to the WWE, that will want to come over to the WWE, that will want to be a part of this thing. There's a finite amount of John Cena matches left, but a lot of them are going to be happening next year. And that's a big opportunity for a lot of people. I think people currently in the WWE are probably already doing the work to get the word out that they want to be a part of this, that they want to tell a story and have a match with John Cena. In terms of who I think, needs to be a part of this, I think the bookends are Dominic Mysterio and Randy Orton. I think Dominic Mysterio is night one, and Randy Orton is the final night of 2025 for John Cena. I think we got to, at some point, see another John Cena CM Punk match. I think John Cena versus CM Punk in 2025, there's too much there. It's too tempting. Money in the Bank 2011 is one of my favorite matches ever. It is a essential viewing match for either John Cena or CM Punk. And I think the idea of these two coming together now, after everything and where they are today, would be remarkable. I think we got to see Cody versus John Cena. You kind of have to. And maybe that's just on an episode of SmackDown. Maybe there isn't a big story that leads into it. Maybe we don't have to turn somebody heel. Maybe we can just see on an episode of SmackDown who's the better man, Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. And maybe that's one of those matches that happens towards the end of the year when John Cena realizes, hey, man, my time is running out and there's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to test myself against the American Nightmare. Cody, why don't we do this tonight? And you do Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. Gunther, obviously, as I mentioned before, is somebody that I want to see in a ring with John Cena. Jacob Fatu is somebody that I want to see in the ring against John Cena. Braun Breaker is somebody who I want to see with John Cena. And maybe Braun Breaker is one of those guys that John Cena can't quite beat. Right? Maybe Braun Breaker is one of those challenges that John Cena can't quite get through. And of course, at some point, I want to see John Cena, maybe at multiple points, have a spot with R-Truth. I don't need a match between John Cena and R-Truth, but the idea of the two of them, you could even do a tag run. Remember last year, Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso had that awesome tag run, and it was short, and they only had the tag title for like a month, and then they went on and did their own things again, but for a minute, it was a lot of fun seeing Cody and Jey Uso together as a tag team. John Cena and Randy and R-Truth together, I think it'd be a lot of fun. There is so much potential with this John Cena thing. We're barely scratching the surface here, and I think here on this show, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what could be happening potentially, and next year, 2025, we're going to be doing a lot of John Cena chatter. So I hope you're ready for it. I know I'm ready for it. I'm excited about it. There's still a lot of chatter coming off of Money in the Bank, a lot of fallout. I told you when we did our reaction show that was the feeling show and that would be a little bit more analytical. I think the most controversial part of the show was still the one that's got people talking anyway, Drew McIntyre's failed cash-in attempt. And based on the people that I was interacting with and that were leaving comments and stuff with me on social media, it's fairly split. There are a lot of people who see it the same way I do, and I absolutely still see it the same way, which is it was worth sacrificing the men's briefcase for this story. And the sacrifice would not have been the same if CM Punk were just costing Drew the Money in the Bank match. Because who knows if Drew would have won regardless. The fact that he had the briefcase and CM Punk ruined it is so much, it's such a bigger deal than Drew, like just losing the ladder match. Like Drew is now, in the story, Adam Pearce put out a video that Drew McIntyre had been suspended from Monday Night Raw indefinitely, and that Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are both fined. I don't think you can do physicality that leads to a suspension angle if it's just Drew McIntyre getting screwed out of the Money in the Bank briefcase. Also, the thing about the Money in the Bank briefcase is it is a fickle beast. There were a lot of people, and people will pretend that they forget, but there were a lot of people hating on Damian Priest for the amount of time that he held on to that briefcase for the amount of time that he considered cashing in but decided not to. If you keep it too short, people don't like it. If you keep it too long, people don't like it. If you're the wrong person to hold it, people don't like it. It's very fickle. And third, there is a briefcase in play. People go, well, now there's no briefcase. There absolutely is a briefcase in play. Tiffany Stratton still has her briefcase. So the story of the briefcase still remains. We just don't have two briefcase stories happening at the exact same time, which is okay. And by the way, it's okay when there are two briefcases in play at times. But we don't lose the luster of the Money in the Bank briefcase because now Tiffany Stratton has it. And really, when you look at the men's division, in terms of cash-ins, I mean, who's to say what happens in the future? But I mean, the other, whether it's Jey Uso, whether it's LA Knight, I mean, some people are saying Chad Gable. It's like, who is Chad Gable going to cash in on and to be the world champion? I mean, I could maybe see it with Jey Uso. But even LA Knight, he's already got, he's going to get a title match. He's going to get Logan Paul for the United States Championship. That's going to happen. So why have him clunk around a briefcase that's not going to pay off the way you want it to, as opposed to doing it this way? I just, and And I do feel like the Punk Drew story has grown quite a bit since then. So I think long term it'll definitely play out as the right move. I kind of wonder, but I doubt that we'll get any kind of explanation as to the Damian Priest not kicking out in the Money in the Bank match. When Gunther pinned Randy Orton at King of the Ring and his shoulders were up, it was said, we'll run it back. And I'm still and maybe it'll still happen at some point. What could happen is, it could be like they could be waiting for that. Either we can do it on the road to SummerSlam somehow, some way, Gunther going over to SmackDown, Randy coming over to Raw for this special match on the way to SummerSlam, or if Gunther were to win the title, maybe that's when Randy goes, hey, old Paul Triple H Levesque had mentioned something about running this back. I think now's a good time. Now that you got that championship title, now's a good time to run it back. I think it'd be a very, very good idea. So I wonder, I would say that maybe they can use it for some friction with Seth Rollins being upset about losing, but that friction already belongs to CM Punk. If Seth Rollins is like pissed that the referee didn't count to 3, is he also pissed at CM Punk? Like, you don't want to waste that energy away. So I kind of feel like it'll just be one of those things where the referee did what the referee decided to do, and we're going to move on. But, it's unfortunate. However, when you are talking about pins, Solo Sikoa pinning Cody Rhodes, it does appear that Solo versus Cody is going to be your match at SummerSlam. And the thing about that match is there's going to be a lot of people thinking Roman Reigns is coming back for it. And maybe he is, but I don't know for sure. That's one of those that, like, you can't put it on last unless Roman Reigns is coming back, because otherwise people are going to be very disappointed. Can you imagine if the Bloodline gets the world title? Like, maybe Jacob Fatu helps, maybe something happens, but like that, like, we think we're going to get Roman Reigns at the end of SummerSlam, but the reason it goes on last is because Solo Sikoa wins the WWE Championship and the Bloodline stands strong. I mean, it's possible. Cody can always win it back, right? Just to mix things up. I'm not saying it's likely, but I'm also saying it's definitely not impossible that you would have that happen, especially after Solo pinned Cody. And Jey Uso is there now. I mean, not Jey Uso. Jacob Fatu is there now. Although Jey Uso will be returning Jimmy Uso will be returning at some point. When he does, do we have Jey Uso? Although Jey Uso may be occupied, because we didn't do an emergency pod about it, but we did get an update from Uncle Howdy / Bo Dallas. There was a continuation of the Uncle Howdy Bo Dallas interview, which is just brilliant, brilliant television. Those 2 segments that they aired 2 weeks in a row on Monday Night Raw are just awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. It's right up my alley. It's well done. It's performed well. And there's so much to dig into as to what's going on. Monday Night Raw is on the air. The Sister Abigail, Carrie-type character, as Michael Cole describes her, delivers another VHS tape, which at some point somebody's going to say, just email the file. You don't have to keep, this pomp and circumstance. Then we have to find a VCR. But another VHS tape. And the VHS tape is a continuation of the interview that we had started the week before. I think it's even clearer now that Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy are in the Firefly Funhouse as they're having this conversation. But in this one, you have Bo Dallas, who is almost exhausted by this conversation, wants to go. But then he says he was destined to do this. This is, of course, coming off of what he had said last week about Uncle Howdy really pressing him about taking advantage of his family's legacy. And Bo Dallas says, we're the ones everyone wanted to forget about. We made them notice us. And Uncle Howdy gives him that line that we've now gotten 2 weeks in a row. There you are. Oh, it's so creepy. There you are. Like this has all been a game that Howdy has been playing, waiting, knowing that if he keeps this line of questioning up, that at some point, whatever that malevolent force is inside of Bo Dallas will show itself, and he'll get to it. He's going to get there, and he did get there. It was, yeah. There you are. And that's when Bo Dallas says, we've become a family. Even now, and this to me was the key. This, for whatever reason, stuck out stronger than just about anything else in the whole segment. He says, even now there's false prophets belittling their family for their own gain. That has to be the mission statement, right? Because then he follows it up with, they must pay for their sins. I am the voice of the reckoning. And then Uncle Howdy says, I am the reckoning. So you're explaining what the relationship is right there, where Bo Dallas is explaining the motivation and what they want to do. And Uncle Howdy is the device that allows them to do it. This voice of the reckoning, and maybe you'll realize that same voice of the reckoning, those complaints, those admissions that they were forgotten, those are coming from your Joe Gacy's, your Nikki Crosses, those people. But the actions, the reckoning itself, those are what the masks are on for, right? Bo Dallas is the voice of the reckoning, but Uncle Howdy is the reckoning. And while the voice of the reckoning can tell you a lot, the reckoning itself is something you don't want to be there for. So now we kind of see who they are, but why? Even now, there's false prophets belittling their family for their own gain, which of course leads you to believe that this would be the reason why they attacked Chad Gable. That Chad Gable made it clear that the Alpha Academy was a family, and he was berating and belittling them for his own gain. Therefore, he must suffer the consequences of the Wyatt Six. However, immediately, you can put that onto a lot of different characters in the WWE, right? Even on Monday Night Raw. Just as we're watching Chad Gable, couldn't you say the same thing about either Dominic or Rey Mysterio? Depending on what your perspective is. I would think that Dominic would be the one who was belittling their family. But theoretically, if you're a heel and you want to be on the side of the heel, you could justify that that's actually Rey that's doing it to Dominic. Moreover, Triple H, everything counts. That's rule number 3. That's why it's on the back of the t-shirt that is available now for a very limited time at notsam.com when you click on the store link. Very limited amount of time, but it's rule number 3. Get the t-shirt. Everything counts. Because Triple H was on Pat McAfee's show. And Triple H was talking about short-term plans and then those kind of long-term plans. Maybe we can get here. Maybe we can get there. And Triple H said on McAfee's show that, imagine all this stuff you could do with the Wyatt Six. What would it look like if the Wyatt Six and the Bloodline, for example, had some kind of battle going on? And then days after Triple H says that, he says there's false prophets belittling their family for their own gain. Will they attack Jey Uso? Not because he took the Fireflies, but because they feel like he's betrayed his family in the Bloodline. Or will they attack the new Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu? Because they are berating and belittling the original Bloodline, the family that brought them here. Are the Wyatt Six baby faces? Are they heels? Are they neither? Does it even matter? With that one little sentence, there's so much to go off of. And those are just taking your literal families. Now we're talking about any tag team that breaks up, anyone who's disruptive in a locker room. A locker room is a family. And if you're berating or belittling the people around you, if you're disruptive there, what if they go to CM Punk, who said you've done this to multiple groups that you've been a part of? There's a million different spots that you could go in with this, and I'm very anxious to see what spot they go in. Speaking of families, and luckily there hasn't been any berating or belittling, I don't think, but the Gargano family and the extended family celebrating big this week is the Gargano and Ciampa connection, DIY, who I feel like the Ciampa family and the Gargano family are intrinsically linked. The DIY is a family. And on SmackDown, they beat Austin Theory and Grayson Waller in what was maybe the best match of the whole weekend. Of all the shows, 3 shows in Toronto, this one might have been the best pure match. DIY wins the tag team championship. A really special moment for that team. A really sort of I don't know, man. It was just really cool to see because coming of age, right, for lack of a better term. But just the fact that they put so much work into going over the history of Toronto and the history of Toronto as it relates to DIY and NXT and Gargano and Ciampa. I think it's really cool that 2 guys who are such students of the game, such fans of the WWE, that those 2 guys are the ones that get to have the old school shaped tag team championship. I mean, that's so fun. That is awesome. And, I'm very anxious to see where this goes. And I would not be at all shocked. Triple H was in charge of NXT creatively. Triple H remembers the good old days of the rivalry between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, the stuff that the dreams are built of. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if at some point they lose the tag titles, the rivalry starts all over again. Although, I mean, is Austin Theory going to join their group? If Grayson Waller and Austin Theory are splitting, and it looks like Austin Theory is the babyface in that group, the fact that Theory and Gargano used to be on the same team as members of The Way has come up in multiple conversations on television, and everything counts. Will we see Theory go babyface, join up with Ciampa and Gargano? Maybe Ciampa starts to resent the affinity that Theory and Gargano have for one another. Maybe Gargano and Theory turn on Ciampa. Who knows? But I think there's a lot there. Either way, I'm not trying to think of the end right now. I'm just celebrating the space that we're in right now as Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, after all these years, after all the time they put in. Because when you think about it, every step of the way, like when they got to NXT, Gargano and Ciampa were not brought to NXT to be the stars of NXT. Gargano and Ciampa were brought to NXT as 2 guys who had a little bit of indie credibility that were brought in to just put developmental talent over and get them to the next level before those guys got to the main roster. And then somehow they ended up the stars of NXT, and then they get to the main roster. And at first, they kind of get forgotten about. They end up going back to NXT. Then they go back to the main roster. And it takes a while to get things started. And every step of the way, the DIY moniker has been true. Every step of the way, it's been on them to just get by on what they've got to offer. And when left to their own devices, things tend to work out for those guys. So the idea that they are now sitting as WWE Tag Team Champions for 2 guys who grew up as wrestling fans is just, it's great to see. I was really happy to see it, and I talk about best match of the weekend. And I can't be 100% sure because Heat Wave was so good. NXT put on Heat Wave over the weekend. And of course, all the matches were good, but everybody retained their titles, which on paper, I was kind of like, I guess everybody's going to retain their titles until the main event. The main event was so well done. Every story was told. I think you're getting a new elements of Trick Williams in there, where leading up to the match, when he cut his promo on Instagram, there was almost a resentment over people thinking that they could just get a shot at his title. There was less humility than we're used to seeing from Trick Williams. We also saw him angry. He was furious when he lost the match, right? And the way that he lost the match was great, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so you started building this, I don't want to say new personality on Trick Williams, but adding to the dimensions that he's already shown as champion before. So you added that to his arsenal. At the same time, you had Javon Evans, the young OG, who they did such a good job of building up, but also that dude had so many moments in this match, and moments where you thought for a second, are they just going to pull the trigger on this kid? Is it time? I'm enjoying the both with him and Ethan Page, that it's like, why wait? Let's get him right to the main event. Let's do exciting things. So that was cool. And I felt like if you weren't sold on him already, everybody's buying in now. I thought it was a great showcase for what he's capable of. And then the finish with Ethan Page taking the finisher from Trick Williams, landing on Javon Evans. Sean Spears not realizing that he had landed on Javon Evans and grabbing Trick Williams out of the ring so that Trick couldn't get the cover. And then, boom, accidentally, All Ego Ethan Page has covered Javon, the young OG, and due to Fatal 4-Way rules, becomes the NXT champion. Who would have thought, man? 6 weeks ago, All Ego Ethan Page showed up on NXT, and it was a huge surprise for everybody. And now he's the NXT World Champion. Who had that on their bingo card? In 2024, January, 6 months ago, if I had told you before SummerSlam, Ethan Page is not only going to be out of AEW, he will be the NXT World Champion, there's no way you would have believed me. It's so crazy how much stuff is happening right now and how fast it's happening. And on that note, the fact that if you were watching that show, the post-credit scene of NXT Heatwave, we usually don't get post-credit scenes. But man, you had your match. Everybody was like, there was an incredible match. Also, by the way, shout out, there were a couple people. I thought not only everybody in this match did good, but I thought Kaylani Jordan and Saul Ruka really took advantage of their opportunity to be showcased. I mean, I thought they were excellent in their match. But then, at the very end of the show, it goes black, and then for a split second, you just see Joe Hendry turn around, and then it goes black again. We are not done with Joe Hendry. And if you were sitting there going, well, I don't understand. Why would you bring in Joe Hendry and just eliminate him right away? Why would you bury Joe Hendry? What a burial. It's a burial of the century. Let him cook. Give it a second. Because if Joe Hendry's coming back, and this is part of a story, it might just make sense. And as it turns out, a lot of things that happen more and more often are making sense if you just let it play out, although I know you love your complaining. Speaking of complainers, villains, we got some villains in AEW, some big story turns. Now, when we recorded last week's podcast, we had not yet seen Forbidden Door, which the real highlight of Forbidden Door was how good that Ospreay Swerve match was. And I thought Swerve went from like a 9 to a 12 in that match in terms of being a top tier guy in AEW. That match, the story that was told in that match, the action that was happening in that match, Swerve versus Ospreay Forbidden Door, made the whole show for me. I thought it was just so good. But So you had two things happening. I don't know if Mercedes Moné is officially a heel, but she certainly came across like a heel. And throwing a celebration for yourself while there is a returning superstar already in the ring feels like a heel move. Man, I think that this should be when Mercedes just goes all the way. I think Mercedes as a heel is 100% the way to go, especially if she's going to do like a belt collector type gimmick. And I think the idea of her being a heel, because also, like, her character hasn't really clicked yet, but her matches have been excellent. I think she's been so great in the ring every time. So this idea that you have this heel who is so full of herself, but then when she gets in the ring, she's actually that good, she's actually excellent. It's like, you can't beat this person because they're so good, but also they're a heel. It makes them unstoppable. Most of the time, heels aren't as good as they say they are and have to use tricks. And they hoodwink opponents. For Mercedes to be a heel who's actually excellent in the ring, I think that's a great character. So you had that, but then you also had MJF going back to being a heel. Now, it's going to be a tough road, I would say, for MJF, because MJF's original heel run was based on the fact that this young guy thought he was claimed to be the biggest star in the company. The problem is now he claims to be the biggest star in the company, and he is the biggest star in the company. So it's a totally different dynamic. That said, the longer I listened to his promo on Collision, the more I liked it. So he turned on Daniel Garcia, and that's on Dynamite, and that's where I was like, I don't know, because they were literally in Daniel Garcia's hometown, and after turning on him, kicking him in the nuts, punching him with the ring, leaving him bloody, there were still people in Daniel Garcia's hometown chanting MJF, MJF, and that is not because to take anything away from Daniel Garcia. It is just because MJF is that big of a star. I started to turn around and go, you know what? I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I like it. When MJF basically didn't declared war on the fans. He said ultimately the fans are the villain here. And the reason he took out Daniel Garcia is because the fans like him. The reason he doesn't like Will Ospreay is because the fans like him. And it's really interesting if you listen closely, like MJF said that his big gripe was that everybody was like cheering for Samoa Joe while MJF was gone, nursing injuries that Samoa Joe had contributed to. Everybody was ready to take on Swerve as their new top guy and forgot about MJF that quickly. Very basic story. I think an effective story, potentially. What I liked was I realized that when he started saying things like, you only care about, like, Will Ospreay is a child. He only cares about ratings from a guy named Meltzer. I care about ratings from a family named Nielsen. TV ratings versus internet love. And what you've got, I think, with this MJF character that's kind of brilliant is it's no secret. Online, there's an entire subgenre of wrestling podcasts that is doing very well that makes their money trashing AEW. And it's been going on for months. And look, AEW doesn't always do itself all that many favors in shaking them off, but they also, this is their whole thing. This is their motive. If you listen to what MJF was saying, MJF was reflecting those points. MJF is taking that narrative that is on the internet that already exists, and he is framing it as a heel narrative. If this is effective, and as he was going on with that promo, it felt like it was effective. If you can take that narrative and get people to boo you as you dictate that narrative, what you're going to end up doing is rallying support behind the product that AEW is. Framing AEW as a product that doesn't care about all this other stuff, only cares about putting on great matches for fans. And if you can get somebody to poo-poo that idea and get booed by the audience. Well, now the audience has kind of rallied together in support of the product because they're booing this guy who's insulting the product. And I think that it will be looked at as genius if it works. We'll see. But I like it. I enjoyed it. I liked it quite a bit. Before we get to emails, we also got the big announcement that Bad Blood is a premium live event is returning October. Atlanta, Metro Boomin was hanging out with Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes had a phenomenal week acting in commercials, not only hanging with Metro Boomin to advertise Bad Blood, but then right after we were talking about the potential Cody Rhodes being a heel and going full Homelander, he does a commercial for The Boys where he is Homelander. Everything counts, right? I don't think Cody's going to turn heel anytime soon, but it was amazing to actually see him as Homelander in this world where absolutely everything counts. And if you think that was cool too, I'd like you to let me know. Email in to notsamwrestling@gmail.com. That's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget to get to notsam.com. There's two things I need you to do. Get tickets to our live show. We are going to be live in Cleveland, Ohio, the Thursday before SummerSlam. That is August 1st. It is right around the corner. Get your tickets now if you are going to Cleveland for SummerSlam. Make sure you are at the live Not Sam Wrestling podcast at Hilarities Thursday night, 8 p.m. Be there, be square. It is going to be a phenomenal show. And you can get those tickets at notsam.com in the tickets link. You can also get our new merch drop that was dropped July 3rd, only available until it'll be a week from Wednesday. A week from Wednesday, I'm shutting down the store once more. If you've never participated in these, I open up the pre-order window for a very limited time, sometimes 1 week, sometimes 2 weeks. This time it was 2 weeks, but we've already chopped a bunch of days off the calendar. We do it pre-orders, the best garments, professionally screen-printed shirts, not direct-to-garment, and we make what is ordered, and then it is done. So get them shirts while you can get them at notsam.com. I'm going to check notsamwrestling@gmail.com. The emails that came in, this one's coming from Demetrius. Greetings, Sam. I will attempt to make this as succinct as possible. I like that. I am a father of 2 young, lovely children and would like to know, when did you start letting your children watch wrestling with you? Any advice about things to keep in mind for their young, developing brains? Yes. AEW is tough for the kids. I had All In on last year because it was on in the middle of the day. And in the beginning of the show, my son was all into it. No pun intended, but that was awesome. And he watched CM Punk versus Samoa Joe. He loved that match. Then my wife and the children went out for a while. When they came back, he walked in the door and Jon Moxley had skewers being slammed into his head, and he was absolutely horrified, and to this day still asks me about it. So that's the type of stuff that is tough. You got to know, what's happening. Like if I'm going to let him watch AEW and the Acclaimed are about to make an entrance, I'll probably hit pause so I can fast forward it so he doesn't hear the lyrics. But the matches are fine. You know what I mean? Like, who's in WWE that would probably be like, I don't know if this one's for you. Like, maybe when the CM Punk Drew McIntyre stuff gets a little tough, I don't know if that one's for you. But the key for me was just letting him find it on his own. I would have it on in the background. I wouldn't, maybe I was just watching it on my iPad. And if he would come over and look over my shoulder and start watching. And if he's interested, feed the interest. If he's not, don't push it. Let's go to Sarah. Hope you're well. I got rough news during Heat Wave that my dad is in the hospital during the Lola Roxanne match. Those ladies helped me get through it just for a moment. The title match at the end started slow, but man, what a crazy ending and a new NXT champion. What do you think is next for Trick? We saw a picture of Joe Hendry at the end. Do you think he goes after the title for the first feud or to start a feud with Trick? Thoughts? P.S. What a great show. It was a great show, Sarah. All the best to your dad, by the way. Let's all think good thoughts for Sarah's dad. And that is the beauty of professional wrestling. The escapism of it all can be really helpful in tough times. I I don't think Joe Hendry is going after the NXT World Championship right away. He doesn't even wrestle for the TNA Championship. So I mean, he might, but I don't think so. I think he'll have his own story. I think Trick Williams obviously would have to go after the world title. But I wouldn't be shocked. Okay, so here's where it's probably going to go. Because we have Great American Bash at the beginning of August, which is a sci-fi special, Sci-Fi Network, whatever. So I think Trick Williams is going to want a rematch, but Shawn Spears is going to go like, no. And he's going to be mad at Shawn Spears. So I think we're going to have Trick Williams versus Shawn Spears first. And maybe that's Great American Bash. And then eventually we get to Trick Williams versus Ethan Page. Caden writes in, hope your day is going well. It's going great. I get to be me. I wanted to ask you about WCW and ECW. I'm trying to watch the greatest ECW and WCW matches. What matches come to mind that you love in those promotions? Okay. I would put on for ECW, maybe Bam Bam Bigelow versus Taz from the pay-per-view where Bigelow ends up going through the ring. That was fun. I've always been partial to that triple threat, the barely legal triple threat between Sandman, Terry Funk, and Stevie Richards. And in WCW is easy. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, Halloween Havoc 97 is a no-brainer. And Hollywood Hogan versus Goldberg from the Nitro in the Atlanta Dome are the two kind of. One is an incredible cruiserweight match, and the other is an incredible spectacle pro wrestling thing. So those are the two. Hey, Zach from Adelaide here, acknowledging you as the podcast tribal chief with the ones the right way round. To that point, I'm going to start directing people to your pod to calm down the IWC as the backlash for Money in the Bank was ridiculous. No, I get it. I don't think it was that bad. All right, I'm not going to, this is a long email, but I appreciate the sentiment, my friend. Julius writes in, first time sending an email. I made the 5-hour drive with my best friend from Flint, Michigan to Toronto for Money in the Bank. No question this week. Just saying thank you for putting out the reaction pod. It helped me with my feelings on the way home after the Drew McIntyre situation at the PLE. Keep up the additional content. That's good, man. I'm glad I could help you get through that ride. Another Sarah. My name is Sarah. I found your podcast when I returned to wrestling around WrestleMania 39. I absolutely love your rules and your open discussion. Thank you, Sarah. You're great. Recently, because everything counts, I've been rewatching the last 2 years of Raw, SmackDown, and PLEs. The Raw after Mania 40 made me think of your podcast on Clash at the Castle, where you discussed the history of I Quit matches and Mama Rhodes. Do you think having Mama Rhodes involved at Clash at the Castle and Rock's words at the Raw after Mania about her, that somehow she will be more involved in the Rock versus Cody match when we get her there? I think it'll get very personal, the next Rock versus Cody match, so it's very possible. 2, you also mentioned a towel match. A towel match is how Cody lost the right to challenge for the AEW Championship. Yes, via MJF throwing in the towel. Yes. Do we see The Rock taunting her that way? No, I don't think so. 3, with the new documentary being so Rock-focused, do you think the delay was that so they could continue to tease Rock versus Cody without Rock coming back? I asked because one of the biggest criticisms of the documentary /fight Rock versus Roman at 40 is the idea that a few lines in a sitcom and 2 appearances that weren't set against Cody versus blah, blah, blah. I have no idea why it was delayed, but I don't know. Phil writes in, first off, thanks for the podcast, giving me someone to talk to with wrestling each week. That's fun that you take it that way. I appreciate that. I listened to your instant reaction, and man, I got to say, I hate it when wrestlers cash in Money in the Bank on the same day. This PLE has become my favorite of the year, not just because of the excellent ladder match, but the looking briefcase through the year. Yeah, I get what you're saying. While this does help several stories, Drew, Punk, Damian, and Seth, the CM Punk and Drew already had an amazing story. This did make it better, but it was so not needed. I would much rather have Punk come out during the ladder match. It would have improved it just as much. No, it would not have improved it just as much. Not even a little bit just as much. But now we're stripped of the men's briefcase looming for some time. Just a thought from a disgruntled fan. First of all, it wouldn't have remotely been the same. You cost me the ladder match. I could have won the briefcase, and then maybe I would have cashed it in, and then I could have become the champion. Or I won the ladder match. I had the briefcase. I already cashed it in. I was going to win the title. You stopped that from happening. Those are not the same thing, even remotely. Drew McIntyre said, I am going to cash in the briefcase on that night. He said it on Raw. I'm going to Money in the Bank, and I'm leaving with the world title. CM Punk said at Clash of the Castle, Drew McIntyre will never hold the title as long as I'm here. It's as simple as that. The story is right there for you. By the way, when you mention matches a first-timer should watch, I think a lot of what you selected were story-based matches, which I love, but the build-up makes the match better. For me, when I have friends over who don't watch wrestling, I throw on either the 2 TLC matches. Those are fine, but most of those matches that are story-based have a 4-minute package right before the match that explains the story. Or, if the commentators are good, they're telling the story as you're watching. I think story-based matches are exactly what you should be showing to people who don't really watch. Steve writes in, I acknowledge you, Sam Roberts, the GOAT, the head of the podcast table. Steve, you're the best, and smart, and right. I really dig the subtle changes Seth Rollins showed at Money in the Bank. His gear was slightly different. Yep. His song didn't start with Burn It Down. And he introduced a few moves I don't think we'd seen him do before. It reminds me of how Chris Jericho changed his whole character up when he returned with the short hair. He dropped the Y2J countdown in his theme, had new tattoos, started wearing trunks instead of long tights, and think he did some new moves too. I'm interested to see where this story goes now that everyone is mad at CM Punk. It makes Punk an interesting character because you kind of like him and you kind of hate him. Can't wait to see where this goes. Please don't retire next year, Sam. I can't lose Cena and you at the same time. I can't make any promises. We'll see. I don't think the Seth change is as dramatic as Jericho, but I do love the effort that he put into just evolving, just come back an evolved version of Seth Rollins. And I think you're right about Punk. But I think that ultimately that's what makes Punk compelling to fans, is that a lot of people don't like him. Like, if Punk is not rubbing people the wrong way, he's not our CM Punk. It's as simple as that. All right, 2 more emails, I think. Dirk writes in, hard to be critical about the product right now, but you're going to try, Dirk. I'll bet you're going to try. But it feels like they missed the mark with Otis and Chad. We're not even there yet. Give it a second. I know we need to let them cook, okay, but it feels like they've moved on with Gable being involved in other things. How do you figure? Literally last week on Raw, they addressed Gable trying to get back on the side with the Alpha Academy, and Otis saying no, and Maxine saying, I'll try to help. Like, they literally addressed it last week on Raw. This is what you're afraid of is not happening right now. I'm not saying it won't happen. It's not happening at the moment. If they're done, they're not. Do you think they did enough to wrap up this story? No, because they didn't wrap up the story. They literally said, to be continued. If you go, to be continued, and then the story's done, I will go, that was a poorly ended story. Which leads me to believe that the story's not over. Come on. Watch the product, Dirk. Okay, last one. Hey, Sam, hope the family's doing well. They're doing great. Thank you for asking. After Money in the Bank, I feel like Drew cashing in and failing the same night was a little bit rushed. How was it rushed? He said he was going to do it. Yes, he said he was going to walk out champion, but it felt like a waste on this night. My suggestion would have been attempting but still failing at SummerSlam. Why would he wait? I mean, what if he's fighting Punk at SummerSlam? What if the goal is to hopefully get to Drew versus Punk at SummerSlam? I mean, and why stretch it out when you know it's coming? You know that Punk is going to ruin the cash-in. So why stretch it out? There's been nothing rushed about Damian Priest versus CM Punk. It's literally, about Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. It's an 8-month story where they haven't even wrestled once. Get a hold of yourself. Drew's saying he wants Punk there to watch him succeed, beats him bloody in an opening or early match on the card. What? And then attempts to cash in on Gunther versus Priest. Then Punk comes out as a distraction and gives Gunther the opening to pin Drew or Priest and gives their feud more fuel to make it to Bad Blood, where I feel they will have a Hell in a Cell. You think the first match is going to be a Hell in a Cell? Why would the first match be a Hell in a Cell? Hell in a Cell is about interference. They're the ones that are interfering. I don't understand what you're even talking about. What do you think of this alternate booking? I think it's terrible. Sorry. I mean, I'm glad you wrote in, but it doesn't make any sense. What if they went with, does this plant seeds to renew the flame of Seth and Punk's rivalry, but that could have been done maybe at the Rumble or before at a different show? You want to wait until January? You want to wait 6 months? I mean, you're now getting to a point where if Gunther's going to win the title, he should win clean, not with a briefcase cash-in. You want Gunther to win the title in a schmoz. You want Drew to hold the briefcase for a month just because that way it's not rushed. You want Drew and Punk not to wrestle till October and for the first match to be Hell in a Cell. And you want Punk and Seth to not revisit their rivalry until January. Okay. All right. I don't think you reread this email before you sent it. In fact, I'm going to do another one. Michael writes in, I think the botched 3 count, this is at Money in the Bank, with Priest should be used to further conflict between Damian and Finn. Okay. Have an investigation where it leads to Finn bribed / blackmailed the ref. Involve Liv on this one. I mean, this feels a little silly. Triple H also mentioned talking to the ref at the press conference. I think it could make an interesting story to involve a ref. They've involved refs before. It gets very wonky. Either you end up with a Danny Davis situation where the ref has to become a wrestler, or a Brad Maddox situation where you don't even know who this guy is and all of a sudden he's the general manager. If they use the ref and say that this ref got bribed by the Judgment Day, he can't ref anymore. So now, what is that guy going to do? Like, that's his job in real life. He wouldn't be able to ref anymore if you used him that way. It just, it feels wonky. It feels a little wonky. One more. And this is because I like the subject line of this email. It says, "All hail our tribal podcast chief." That's a good one. It's from Chris. I wanted to get my feelings, as you said we could. You definitely can, about the Rollins Priest match prior to Drew coming out. I wanted to get your thoughts on another missed call by the ref when Rollins clearly had the 3 count after his broken arrow. Oh, you're talking, yeah. And the ref stopped the count. Seth should be our new world champion. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, we've all been talking about it. And then, okay, now I know I'm done. Somebody emailed, I got Luke emailed, the subject line is something you'll think is pretty cool. And it's a Photoshop picture of Otis as the Fiend. Clearly, excuse me. You should tweet that to me so I can read. I don't even know if I'll retweet it, to tell you the truth. It's really disturbing to watch. Clearly, after the email that we got suggesting that maybe Otis can be the new Fiend. Oh, I appreciate all the emails. I'm sorry if sometimes I make fun of them. There's a ton of them that I didn't get to today. So keep emailing. I just kind of go through them as we go. Don't forget to join me in Cleveland. Get those tickets at notsam.com. Get your shirts at notsam.com. Subscribe to this podcast either in audio and or on the YouTube channel, YouTube/Notsam Wrestling. If you're listening on Apple, leave a review and a rating. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, leave a comment, and we'll see you real soon. Thank you, everybody.